Do you ever wonder why you're doing what you do in life? Do you wish that you could be really happy and passionate about what you do? Or maybe you already are and you want to expand in a different direction. Hi, I'm Barbara Ann, host of What the Why? I love what I do. A lot of that has to do with my story, my journey to this point in life. And guess what? Everybody has a story. So please join me for conversations with leaders from all walks of life about what they do, and more importantly, why they do it, how they found their core purpose, their passion, their mission in life. And if you're looking for your own, maybe you'll get some great suggestions on how you too can find your why.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What the Why. If you haven't seen us before, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about what they do and how they figured out their purpose or their why in doing it. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you feel stuck and you want to get unstuck in your job, your career, your relationships. All of our guests have something in common. At some point, they went through some kind of pivot, felt similarly, and decided to do something about it. And today's guest is no exception. For those of you who've been with us for all 4 seasons, first of all, thank you. But you may remember this guest. It was one of the more meaningful television shows that I did at the time. In fact, I was even thinking about giving this up. And after interviewing him and some others, I was like, no, this is why we do this show. I'm super excited, for those of you who don't know who he is, to introduce you to Terry Tucker. Terry's a speaker, an author, and a podcast guest on the topic of mindset and self-development. And so many different things that he's done. He's a really fascinating person to get to know. He's been a marketing executive. He's been a hospital administrator. He was a SWAT hostage negotiator. That's not something that many people have on their resumes. But for the past now 14 years, really, um, one of the reasons why I felt that continuing the show was so important after talking to him was he's a cancer warrior. We're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about the books that he's written. The Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And one of his newer ones, Four Truths and a Lie, which I think is just a brilliant title. Ancient Wisdom for Living Your Modern Purpose. So without further ado, I'm so excited to have Terry back. First of all, to have Terry here, if you go back and watch that original episode, but to have him back 2 years after the fact. So please join me in a round of applause welcoming Terry Tucker to our show. So yay! Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Well, Barbara Ann, thanks for having me back. I'm really looking forward to talking with you again.
Oh, so am I. I was so excited when we were able to have you come on. And for those who don't remember, or for those who didn't see the original episode but can go back and watch on wherever you're streaming this podcast from or listen in the event that that's how you're accessing it. Um, Everybody knows that we always start still to this day with the same first question, which is like you've done, and you have done some really amazing things, but what did you want to do when you were growing up?
I wanted to be a professional basketball player. I was 6'5" when I was 13 years old and, felt I had the talent, certainly had the desire to do that. Unfortunately, 4 knee surgeries, 3 in high school, 1 in college, took that off the table. And then it was, what am I going to do? And it was, I wanted to follow in my grandfather's footsteps. My grandfather was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And in 1933, he was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad, who was an infant at the time, always remembered the stories that my grandmother told of that knock on the door of, Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us, your husband's been shot. So when I sort of expressed that interest, in following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. But that's the job, that's the life my father wanted me to lead. That wasn't the life I was supposed to lead. And when I graduated from college, my father was dying of cancer. So I kind of had, the first big adult decision in my life. I could have said, "Sorry, Dad, I know you're dying, but I'm going to go do my own thing, blaze my own trail." Or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do. So understanding that backstory, my resume makes a little bit more sense. My first couple jobs were in business because that's what my dad wanted me to do. And I became a 37-year-old rookie police officer. I waited till my father passed away, but eventually got into what I felt I was supposed to do with my life.
Mhm. Which, again, just one of the many fascinating things and that you've done. And it's interesting because there is, of course, a television show about a rookie police
Yep.
officer, and it really is kind of more of your lived experience. Um, but you became a hostage negotiator. I mean, let's talk about the rest of the journey. Like, okay, we know what you wanted to do. You actually went ahead, you became a police officer. Now, a lot has happened even since then to where you are now. So, um, walk us from you're finally doing what you want to do to how you are helping people reframe what it means to live and change your life and change others in the process.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, 37 years old, I'm married. My wife had married me when I was a suit and tie hospital administrator. And I, one night at dinner say, "Hey, I'd like to take this class and sort of dip my toe in the water of law enforcement." And she was very supportive. She's like, "Take the class, see what happens." And we were living in California at the time. I became a reserve police officer with the city of Santa Barbara. And I would work all week in my job. I was a customer service manager for an academic publishing company. And then Friday night, I would come home, put on my uniform, and go to roll call and work all night and come home Saturday morning. And my wife tells this story better than I do, kind of with this big grin on my face, but totally exhausted because I'd been up for, more than 24 hours. And she said, I knew then that that's what you were supposed to do. And shortly after that, our daughter was born and we moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. And I said to her again, "Look, I want to do this full time. I want to go through the police academy. I want to start at the bottom and work my way up." She supported me, and I was able to do that. And then after 10 years, she lost her job, and she's always been the primary breadwinner. So now it was a matter of me supporting her and saying, "Okay, we're going to move to Houston, Texas." And so I gave up my law enforcement career to move to Houston. And Houston was where in 2012, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, a rare form of melanoma, and told that more than likely I would be dead in 2 years. And that's where, I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. Now I've got to try to turn that death sentence into a life sentence. And I always say I've probably done more in the 14 years I've been dying of cancer than I've done in my entire life. And you read some of my resume. I've done some pretty cool things in my life, but and you and I were talking about this before you hit record, the importance of the relationships we have with other people. To me, I always say what's gotten me through cancer are my three F's, which are my family, my friends, and my faith. Probably in the opposite order, my faith, my family, and my friends. That's what's gotten me through this. And that's what I focus on. And, if I'm writing books, if I'm being a guest on a podcast, whatever I'm doing, I usually it's usually about how can I make a difference in somebody's life? How can I tell people what I've been through and hopefully help them go through their difficult times in life? And that's what I've been doing for the last 14 years.
Hmm. And there's so many different ways that people react to something like that. And, let's talk about some of the things that you've been doing. I mean, because technically, once we're here, from a scientific standpoint, we kind of are dying the moment we're born
Yeah.
in many ways. But, when someone tells you you've got 2 years to live, and you just kind of look at them and say, yeah, that doesn't work for me. Um, where do you find the courage to step up and say, yeah, no, that's not going to be the end of my story?
I guess I sort of want to back up. I don't want your audience to think that I didn't go through difficult times. I
Oh,
certainly did.
no,
You know,
absolutely.
so I went through all the stages we would associate with grief. First it was mad, or first it was denial. I can't possibly have cancer. I've done everything right. Then I got mad. I can't possibly have cancer. I've done everything right. And then there was a bargaining with God. Our daughter was in high school when I was diagnosed, and there was, please God, let me live long enough to see her graduate from high school. And then I absolutely got down. I got depressed. I felt sorry for myself. But then I just came out the other end and was like, this sucks, but I'm going to have to embrace the suck. I don't like the cards that I've been dealt, but I'm going to have to play these cards to the best of my ability. And it really has been, kind of turning your life over to God. You talk about, when somebody tells you you're going to die, I think the first question you ask yourself is, do you want to live? And a lot of people are like, of course I want to live, but there are a lot of people that no, I'm not sure I do. Because living implies battling, working, getting down in the dirt, in the weeds, and really trying to get through this. It's not just, oh yeah, I want to live. And I've seen people that have turned their entire life over, to somebody in a white coat with a bunch of initials after their name. I was like, no, I've got to have something to live for. So it was, I want to see my daughter graduate from college. I did see that. I saw her graduate from the United States Air Force Academy, in college. I walked her down the aisle when she married her husband, and we recently found out that she's pregnant. So I'm going to be a grandfather now. So, all these things that I never, was told that I was probably never going to have happen in my life have happened. And I think a lot of it is because you say to yourself, no, I'm not going to take this. I'm not going to take this lying down. Maybe I'm going to die. But if I'm going to die, I'm going to go out fighting, scrapping, doing whatever I need to do.
Mhm.
And that's what I've done. And I've a lot of times turned this over to God. I mean, it's like this is in your hands. Whatever you want to happen. And Barbara Ann, there have been times where I thought I was going to die, where I had a blood clot in my lung, I couldn't breathe, when they took my leg off in the middle of COVID, they amputated my leg. All these times when I was pretty sure I was going to die, when I didn't die, and I just want people to understand you've got to have something to live for in life, whatever that is, whether, it's yourself, it's your faith, it's your family, it's your hobby, your work, whatever it ends up being, you've got to have something in life to live for. Because if you don't, this fight is just too doggone hard if you don't have something to live for.
You just explained the whole reason again why we do this.
Yeah.
What is your purpose? Why are you here? Whether you are Judeo-Christian and you talk about the ones that got the talents, whether, whatever. What gets you up in the morning? What's your North Star for those of you who don't believe in a higher power? These are the things that keep us going. And I know I started to tear up when you said that you found out you're going to be a grandfather, because one of the things that we did talk about is whether or not you would ever get to see that.
Yeah.
And here you are,
Yeah.
still going strong, still writing books, still pursuing new and exciting treatments that we talked about before we came online. Um, but let's talk about your books, because when we first interviewed, you were still working, you had what? You had 10 principles to leading your uncommon and extraordinary life. And we talked a little bit about that. And I've had the privilege, I have the electronic version of Four Truths and a Lie. Um, so let's talk about your books. What inspired the first? And how did you come up with the second? Where did you find that second book?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have said to me that I would have written a book at any point in my life, I would have told you were absolutely nuts. I mean, there was no way I was going to write a book, not alone write one, but then, have it published and all that. So the first book was really born out of two conversations I had. I'd been a high school basketball coach in Texas when we lived there. And I had one of my players who had moved to the area in Colorado where my wife and I live now with her fiance, and the four of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner that I was excited that she was living close and I could watch her find and live her purpose. And Barbara Ann, she got real quiet for a while. And then she looked at me and she said, "Well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is?" And I said, "I have absolutely no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, and there is a reason, and then living that reason, living that purpose." And then the second conversation was with a young man who reached out on social media and asked me what I thought were the most important things he should learn to not just be successful in his job or in business, but to be successful in life. And I didn't want to give him that, get up early, work hard, help. I didn't want to give him sort of the cliches we all know. So I spent some time basically taking some notes and kind of came up with these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles. And then I sent them to him. And then I stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath that principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates this principle. So literally during the 4 to 5 month period where I was healing after I had my leg amputated, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles. And that's how Sustainable Excellence, the first book I wrote, came to be. But as soon as I published that book, I always felt there was a second book. Sustainable Excellence was a book about success, how we can be successful, or at least from my perspective. I always felt there was another book that also started with the letter S, and that word was significance. Significance is what we do for other people. Success is what we do for ourselves. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can be successful and significant. So back in right around Thanksgiving 2023, I started to compile the stories for Four Truths and a Lie. And a lot of times on podcasts, I'll talk about what I call my four truths. And then I was like, the four truths I think are in bedrock. They're immovable. And then there was this lie that you see it on TV, drive this car, you'll be somebody.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Marlboro man, smoke these cigarettes and you'll be cool.
Yeah.
Well, the Marlboro man died of lung cancer, I
Yeah.
mean, so it was this lie that society perpetuates on you because you've got to be rich, you've got to be famous, you've got to be influential. And you don't have to be any of those things. Those things don't make you great. It's kind of what we were talking. Find your purpose in life and live it. And
Hmm.
so, Four Truths and a Lie, the title came from my daughter. I was telling my daughter about the book. She's like, "We'll call it Four Truths and a Lie." I'm like, "Brilliant. I knew there's a reason I had a kid, It was like, so she was actually the one that came up with Four Truths and a Lie. It was like, "Dad, these are the things you talk about on podcasts." And then the lie, which we really never talk about on podcasts,
Yeah.
but it's the total opposite of the things that you talk about. Put them all together in a book. And that's how Four Truths and a Lie came about.
And I love that because so much of marketing, especially, is pushing that lie.
Yeah.
So much of it. And it's interesting how many people you encounter, I'm sure people I encounter who really believe that that is what's necessary for success. Um, and the whole FOMO, fear of missing out, and how that affects everything. And so kudos for calling out the lie because so many people that I coach that want more, want change, but the fear of losing what they have, in many instances materially, but otherwise as well, really is being fed by our culture, especially our media and our social media culture.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a great fable. I don't think this ever happened, but there's a great fable, a story about Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great was probably the biggest megalomaniac, biggest conqueror, probably killed more people than Hitler did during World War II. I mean, the guy he conquered the entire world.
Yeah.
And there's a story about him when he's dying. And he calls his counselors, his generals around him, and he said, I want you to carry out my final three wishes. And he said, my first wish is I want only my doctors to carry my coffin to the grave. My second wish is I want the road to the cemetery paved with gold and silver and precious stones. And my third wish is I want my hands hanging outside my coffin. One of his counselors steps forward and says, excuse me, you're Alexander the Great. You're the most powerful man in the world. These seem, my words, not his, kind of goofy wishes. You can have whatever you want. Why do you want these wishes? He said, well, number one, I want my doctors to carry my coffin to the grave because I want people to understand that no doctor heals anybody. They just help the body to heal itself. So I want people to understand that the choices they make, the decisions they make about exercise and what they eat and how they get enough rest and reduce stress, all the things we know, I want them to understand that it's really on them as to what kind of a life they're going to have health wise. Secondly, he said, I spent my entire life conquering, having influence, power, wealth over everything. And yet, none of that comes with me beyond the grave. None of the gold, silver, or precious stones come with me when I die. I want people to realize that chasing wealth is sheer folly. And then he said, I want people, the final wish, I want my hands hanging outside my coffin. I want people to realize I came into this world empty handed and I leave it pretty much the same way. And I think that's just a great, like I said, it's a fable. I don't think it actually happened, but it's a great story that kind of teaches us what's really important in life. None of the material things that we have, it's the relationships that we have with each other. And I'll end with this. There's a psychology professor at the University of Chicago who does this experiment with his students. The idea is you go out and you get on a bus, and in three questions, you go deep with somebody. So you sit down next to somebody, hey, how you doing? I'm fine, how are you? Question one, and I'm just making this up. Question two, what do you do for a living? I'm a doctor. Oh, question three, have you always wanted to be a doctor? Barbara Ann, it doesn't matter what they say. They could say, no, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened. Or my mother was a doctor, but she died of breast cancer at 40, so I'm honoring her memory by being a doctor. Whatever they tell you, they're telling you their why, their purpose, their mission in life. And we don't do that with people. We don't go deep with other people. Social media lets us stay on the surface. My goal in life is to go deep with people. I'm curious. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to go deep with you.
You just explained my purpose. I figured out some time ago that my purpose is helping other people navigate and live into theirs. And everything that I do is asking the open-ended questions from a place of curiosity and non-judgment to help people figure out and to learn because I'm genuinely curious. Like I said, the people that I get to talk to, and you were one that I was like, oh no, he's coming back. And even the team was like, do you need to vet? No, 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 no. No, I want him back. Um, People I get to talk to are in every one of their own unique ways, because we're all extraordinary. We're all created or made extraordinary, but not everybody lives into it. And so, and the people I talk to, whether they're the small, hyper local entrepreneurs or, big time performers, the big thing about all of them is when you're talking to somebody who's doing what they're passionate about, even when they don't feel so well, their face lights up, they get excited. You can feel the energy because that's what their soul is meant to do. And I'm so, so grateful that your soul is still here to keep doing it. So as we approach time, it's just like last time, it was like, wait, 30 minutes went by? Yeah, almost 30 minutes has gone
Yeah.
by. Um, you know, First of all, we have to like pre-schedule another taping to recording 2 years from now so
Okay.
that, because when I talked to you before, I was like, I was talking to somebody who I would love to have interviewed again, but you had the position at the time that it's okay if yeah. And so it's been an honor to even be able to have you back and be able to find out that, oh my gosh, you're gonna have a grandbaby. That's so amazing. Um, but you've also, to the extent you're comfortable sharing, you've had, because you haven't given up, there's some potential good news as well.
Yeah.
Um, so just the thought that, okay, I can maybe schedule you 2 years, 4 years, and 6 years out could be really, really exciting.
I
In
like that.
addition, we'll make it an every 2 year check-in.
Sure.
Okay, Terry's still here changing the world. He's written yet another book. His grandchild's going into kindergarten. Yeah. Um, but all that said, you've had some really, really great things to share with our audience. Um, so what would you encourage someone who may be struggling or going through change and they feel like, "Ah, I don't know if I can do it." What words of encouragement um, could you offer to them in addition to getting
I
your
would
book
say you
done?
can do it. I'd say there's going to be days when you don't think you can do it, and it's okay to kind of rest on those days, but you those can't be every day. You've got to push yourself because the only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to improve is if you do things that are uncomfortable. Step outside your comfort zones. And I will offer this to you because I do it every day of my life. Every day, do at least one thing that scares you, that makes you nervous, that makes you uncomfortable, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But if you do those small things every day, when the big disasters in life hit us, and they hit all of us, we lose somebody who's close to us, we unexpectedly get let go from our job. Like me, we find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness. You will be so much more resilient to handle those things when they come about. So get out there and live your life. I mean, nobody has anything other than what's right in front of them. I don't know if I'll wake up tomorrow morning. And that's okay because I want to live today to the best of my ability. And living today isn't about making all the money and driving the nice car and living in the nice. It's the connections you make with other human beings. Find other people you can help. And I'll leave you with this. When I get down and I get depressed, and I do, and I spent 4.5 years on a clinical trial drug that just beat the heck out of me. I would sit in the waiting room sometimes waiting to go back and you would see somebody new come in and you could just tell they had that deer in the headlights look and they were scared, they were nervous. And I would just wheel over to them and say, "Hi, I'm Terry. What's your name?" You know what? Things are going to be okay. These are the greatest nurses. I mean, you're going to be taken care of. Everything's going to be okay. And they would all of a sudden be seen as another human being, not as a cancer patient, not as a number, as a human being. See other people as human beings. Make relationships with them. As you said, be curious, get out there and find out about them, ask questions. And I can promise you, your life will be amazing just by the connections that you make with other human beings.
Perfect. Perfect. So everybody hear us now. 2 years from now, Lord willing, we're both here. We're going to do this again.
I like it.
And in the interim, um, all of Terry's contact information and links to where you can get his books will be in the additional information in the comment section posted wherever you are listening to or viewing this podcast. But what is the easiest way for people to reach you?
Just go to motivationalcheck.com and you can leave me a note there.
Okay, so motivationalcheck.com it is. And so thank you again. Congratulations on becoming a grandparent. That's
Thank
so
you.
amazing. And to your daughter and her husband and all of the amazing things that you've gotten to experience. I'm so excited for you and your wife, um, and your whole family. And thank you for sharing that part of you with us. Um, and for all of you, I hope that this conversation was meaningful to you. It was meaningful to me the first time I got to talk to Terry. Super excited to have gotten to talk to him again today. And you know, Terry is one of an amazing list of guests that we have. We're super excited as a podcast that we've been able to reach even further and broader. But all of our original shows are available for viewing wherever you get your podcasts, and all our new shows are also available. on Spotify and YouTube and wherever you listen and or watch. And so thank you so much for doing so. We really appreciate that. There are so many viewing choices and listening choices these days, so it's not lost on us how much we appreciate you for taking the time to watch us. And please share with others that you think would benefit from the content that we're sharing with the world about what the why. And also, whether you're looking to make changes in your life, no matter how big or small, tune in again for more exciting, inspirational, and really amazing guests like Terry, who've overcome some really significant obstacles to find their purpose in life and to live it.